to the title card for today. So, hello everybody. It's me again, Isabel, which is I'm going to be your host for like all 8 of the panels this weekend. So, get used to me because I'm going to be here for a while. Today is the third panel of Friday, which is the Kickstarter preparation and know-how panel. And with me for this panel, I have Giselle Weaver, who is the author of Star Trip and also a Kickstarter specialist at Hiveworks. So here's Giselle.
Hello, this is me, Giselle.
And with us, we also have Susanna Harcum and Owen White, who are partners in life and art, who create the comic Tripping Over You and have several Kickstarters under their belt for said comic.
Hi, this is Owen. Hello. This is Susanna.
So today's topic, this hour's topic, since we had several topics today, is going to be very technical, so a bit less like creative than the past ones, but I think it'll still be very instructive for any artists in the audience that are trying to get into like bookmaking and Kickstartering and all that jazz. So just as a reminder, like all the other panels, if you're watching us on Twitch, you can scroll down and we've got a couple of promotions that are posted below the Twitch channel. So currently we've got a sale going on in our store with the code SPRING2020. You can save 10% on our books, which you should totally buy because they're great. And we also have 2 Kickstarters running, which is very appropriate for the current topic. So we have Alice in the Nightmare Book 1 and Amongst Us Book 1. Alice in the Nightmare being a YA story happening in the world of Wonderland, and Among Us being the story of 2 girlfriends just being adorable together. So definitely click on the links to check out both. And if you so feel inclined, back the Kickstarter, check it out. Or for both, you can actually read them online as well. See if you get into the story and then decide. Be sure to also follow us on Twitter. We have our Twitter stream below the Twitch stream. So you can follow all the announcements we have for the different panels, and be sure to also follow Iron Circus because they are also having a bunch of streaming panels for their PajamaCon 2020. So definitely check that out and, chime in to see what's going on over there. They've got comments going. They've got a bunch of people coming in and talking about their stuff. It's really great. So you can find new products, new artists, new comics. And that's it for the preamble, so we can start talking Kickstarter. Yeah. So, I think the first thing to talk about when we're talking about Kickstarter is still how new this kind of is. Because when I started my comic, a million years ago in internet history time, which is basically a decade, Kickstarter wasn't it didn't exist yet. It started a bit after we launched our comic in 2011 or something like that. Or maybe it existed before, but there wasn't anybody doing comics using it yet. And it kind of started with Spike Trotman doing her first anthologies through that, and a couple of people trying out. And I remember we were among the first people that were taking a swing at it, and it was very stressful when we did Namesake Book 1 because we were we have no idea what to do. Let's hop in. So it's something that's still very, very new, but in less than 10 years has developed as being basically integral to the idea of working on a webcomic online, and has had actual trends develop around it and fade into obscurity, and then new trends that pop up. Before, if you did a Kickstarter, you had to have your book that would be a hardcover if you got over a certain goal, and now people do stretch goals, which can be various things, and some of them are kind of bananas. So yeah, not only is it very young, but even being young, it's already grown incredibly, and added people on staff specifically for comics. Notably Camilla, which is the comic representative and is very cool and very fun. So if you ever have problems while you're doing Kickstarter, definitely write to them. So, when you guys started your comics, was Kickstarter around? When you guys started to want to make books, specifically the Tripping Over You crew, how long was Kickstarter running? Why did you turn to it? Were you worried?
That's such a good question. We definitely started a couple of years before Kickstarter was kind of a thing too. I think we did our first book, had to have been 2013, I think, or 2014.
I think so, yeah.
And we'd been running for a couple of years before that, and we were very worried, very scared of it, and very, didn't know what we were getting ourselves into and what the situation was even going to look like on the other end. Oh, hold on, my sticky keys. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
Sorry, you sort of blanked out a little bit in the sound. You were saying before?
Yeah, we were actually really worried going into it that we didn't know what it was going to look like, and we didn't know really what to do the first time we did it because it was brand new. Do you remember how we found out about it?
I actually think that some other comic artists were doing it at the time, and we started taking notice to it when people were saying you should do a book one, you should have a book for that. And we just kind of eyed it and we're like, well, we could try it. What's the worst that could happen?
I think a lot of the issues that scared people, when Kickstarter started, and still now it's kind of an issue, and me and Giselle could definitely sort of go into that more. But I think one of the primary issues is people over-promising and not necessarily budgeting for those promises. And that was mistakes that would happen a lot early on because people would make a budget that would sort of exclude shipping and how much shipping has grown over the years.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I've seen people run into as a problem, especially when they do gangbusters on a Kickstarter and get several thousand backers. But haven't accounted for the fact that shipping is going to be close to tens of thousands to just ship out a book, even 1,000 books. And that can make or break a Kickstarter. Even if it does successfully fund, it's just and suddenly I don't have money to mail the books out, which is always something you have to pay attention to when you're doing a Kickstarter nowadays.
For sure.
It's so real.
Often the cost of shipping the books is the same as printing them, if not more.
Yeah,
especially now.
Especially overseas.
Yeah, especially international.
Yeah, international has gotten just bananas, and not just even more expensive, is packages are being held more and more.
That's true. Yeah, there's a lot of specific requirements for some packages. You have to fill out customs forms really particularly for some countries and arrange them on your package in a certain order, or even have them affixed and then also written on the package specifically for some countries, or you have a higher chance of them being held up in customs.
Yeah,
I can definitely, there's people in the chat that especially that's a thing too that's important to remember. A lot of people say you shouldn't run a Kickstarter in December because if you get hit in December, you also get hit by taxes because you get hit by taxes for that year because it's closing in the year. But shipping prices also jump in January.
Yes, that's true.
So if you do a Kickstarter in December and you're not worried about shipping, you're not worried about taxes, you should still be worried about shipping prices. Because I remember we ran one in December because the offer really, really wanted us to. And then when we got to January, it was oh, and shipping is twice now. It's damn.
Yeah.
That was in 2016. When everything started going completely crazy for some unknown reason. What could it be?
No idea.
I wonder. Mystery.
It just started going really insane. But yeah, shipping is the big killer. And I find there's a lot of people that are worried because when you're setting up a Kickstarter, for people who have never done a Kickstarter that might be listening, and when you're setting that up, you set up the price of the tier for the items and you set up the shipping separately. And a lot of people they estimate their shipping and they're worried about they can see oh, shipping to Canada or Ireland is going to be $22, but I don't want to put that in because it's going to discourage people. But then that comes out of the tier money, So I think
you're giving your books for a discount then.
Yeah, it's sort of the whole debate of do you want to take a percentage out of that and charge less for shipping? Do you want to put the complete shipping and have a risk of some people maybe not backing it? It's a very difficult question for offers now, especially since with stuff like conventions closing with the coronavirus too, people having to deal with shipping is just going to become more and more a thing.
For sure. It is. It's very worrying.
Flat rate envelopes, there's someone asking in the chat if we purchase flat rate envelopes, are they still valid when you use them? That depends on a lot of things. Also, they're not valid for all countries. Like, it depends also what system you buy them from. It's not usually the best investment. It's usually better to, like, if you're shipping internationally, it's good to get like an international account with a supplier. That's
some usually... envelopes also are more expensive by half of the cost of to ship them internationally first rate. Are not twice as much, but half as much additional.
There's also a lot of people that have been trying to save money just sending stuff in the US via media mail.
Yes, yeah.
Media mail is also like a bit of an interesting like topic, because media mail was essentially something that was created to send like media to like libraries and schools cheaply, and they're not super into being used for Kickstarters, but at the same time they can't really like complain about it. It's a bit odd.
I found that it almost varies by post office individually. I guess there is a provision in the media mail rules that says that comics don't necessarily count as books, even if they are the length of a book. Or in a book binding form. And I've had some post offices actually take issue with that, whereas some are, it's a book, you know what I mean? It's more about the weight of the package and the way that the package handles when you ship it.
You also can't put anything else in there. Like, it can only ship the book packages, so any package with extra rewards has to go out through normal mail.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And then they'll do international media mail, which would have been like a great system, like if only.
Yeah.
If we had if we had international book exchanges for cheap, I'm pretty sure Amazon would have abused it by now.
Yeah,
for sure.
Just ruining it for everybody.
So true.
Just getting in there and destroying it. So, we have a little thing in the chat. I just had a backer notify me that labeling the package as a comic rather than a book means whoever receives it gets charged custom. That is true.
That is true.
That is 100% true, because some countries have laws. Like in France, they have something called le prix unique du livre, which is like the unified price of the book, where books have to cost the same thing in all stores, and you can't charge taxes on it. But comics are not considered quote-unquote books. So in a lot of countries, they have those little rules. Comics are considered media products, and books are considered literature. So in some countries, if you tag it comic, you are like, you are going to get charged customs. However, if you mislabel things in some countries, they will just straight up hold it. So it's like, it's a bit of a gamble. Like if I put book down, maybe they won't charge custom on it, but if they figure out that it's actually comic because they decide to do a random opening search of it, then they might hold the package. Like for some international countries, it becomes a bit of a like, how's this gonna stick, you know?
Yeah.
We have that problem also because for international packages, we have to try to keep the costs, like the declared cost, as much as we can under $20.
Right.
Which is not that bad. Oh, you go, Giselle.
Well, I want to mention the fact, because we use now a new system, especially in particular with Hiveworks, because as the project assistant with Hiveworks, my job is in part being able to set up everything after a Kickstarter to be ready to send out to backers. And so one thing that we have to do is we've learned how to do kitting, which is where you combine like a bunch of rewards and like the book into one package. And thankfully, when we have things like, small rewards like pins or charms, and like especially when it comes to like stickers and like postcard prints, we just slip them all inside the book or like inside the package with the book. And then when we send the book out, we can label something under $20, because technically that's how much it costs to make the thing. So it's okay, it's above board. But yeah, that's one thing we've had to do recently, because in the past when we've sent out books and like declared them how much it was on the Kickstarter, it was very much often a case of people being like, yeah, they asked me for like $20 in customs, like, at the Swiss border or something like that. And we're just like, we can't do anything about that, essentially.
Yeah, it has to be at least cost price, unfortunately. And, if you have a country that's like, comics are a media thing, then you're going to get slammed either way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They've declared comics a luxury product. The man is taking our comics.
I didn't know that I was living such a high life with like my bookshelf full of comics right now. Look at me.
Yeah. So luxurious.
Just put on your fur coat and lean on your bookcase of comics.
Is that not how you read comics?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
The recumbent queen.
A glass of grape juice as I found my way through, like, my I'm looking at my book now, my Valors and my my manga.
Just read Dershin's new book with like a cigar, like, yes, art.
Mars. Yes, it's about the experience of like depression, like, told through the lens of living on Mars. Like, yeah, exactly.
That's not literature, it's a comic.
Truly luxurious literature.
But only according to like the people who control the world. It's fine.
Of course, yeah.
That's not upsetting in any way. It's fine.
Of course, yeah.
Womp womp. Yeah.
You're gonna say, Giselle, though.
But one thing I was because I learned something new. I didn't know in France, like, they had a requirement that all books are sold at the same price. That's interesting. Like books is in like paperbacks, I guess.
Yeah.
Which makes sense, because I think usually paperbacks are, at least in Canada, are usually like the baseline of like $10.99 Canadian or something like that. So that does make sense.
Oh, well, they don't have that in Canada. It's only in France.
Okay.
Like, the idea behind the unified book price is to basically prevent stuff like Amazon and Fnac, which is basically French Amazon, to essentially destroy all the small bookstores, because France still has like a plethora of small bookstores, but the North American landscape does not.
I see.
So it's a bit it's a bit complicated, but in France they basically wanted to sort of maintain this landscape of smaller boutiques that they had, especially since they treat comics in a very different way than Americans. So there's just a lot of factors. It doesn't keep them from straight up fleecing offers, though. That's going a bit off topic, but a few years ago, the Minister of Culture in France made changes to the way that freelancers paid taxes, and it made it so that, like, if you were like an illustrator freelancer, comic freelancer, you had to pay like something like 12 or 18% more taxes, and
whoa,
what?
Yeah, than you used to. Then, like, before you were paid, like, you were paying reduced taxes because you were like a non-stable employment, but then you change it, and now you had to like pay way more. So a bunch of people just gave up because they were like, well,
makes sense.
It's a bit of a different experience in American artists, because American artists, when you talk to people who sort of like, put their pencils away, often the reasoning behind it is like, oh, well, I tried, but I need health care. But in places like France, where people have, baseline healthcare and stuff like that, so they're more taken care of by the state. But then the state's just upping stuff like the taxes suddenly, it's like, oh, I guess I'm done. Because even though there's a stronger baseline, you're still just skirting the line. Any change to that, it fucks you up, basically.
For sure, yeah.
So it's an interesting situation, because a lot of people think like, oh, if you're an artist in the UK or in France or in Japan, you're like better taken care of. But the situation is as precarious as it is in the US. It's just different.
Yeah.
Still a struggle.
Yeah.
That sucks.
I want to answer Angsthace's comment about sending Canadian Hive orders to Toronto artists and like doing it for like everybody else and like living in their various like countries. It actually it would cost more for the artists to receive the books and then mail them out themselves, because with us in particular for Hiveworks, since we're a company and we have a warehouse we work out of, we get reduced shipping. So like regardless, like it will still cost more for like the artist to mail things out, other than us with like our are stable shipping at like the lowest cost price possible.
Plus, shipping all the books as like a big box that's been pre-wrapped so the artist doesn't have to do all of that is actually pretty costly too.
Yeah.
So it's like by adding the cost to ship it to the artist and then the cost for the artist to do all the shipments, you come up to about the same. Whatever you saved is gone.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely a bit complex. A solution that a lot of companies have is that they end up having sister warehouses in different countries, which is something we want to develop with Hiveworks over time, to have a sister warehouse in Europe and stuff like that, so we can have reduced prices for that. But that is very complicated to set up. But I think more and more as Kickstarters and online stores develop, you're going to have people who are, like right now there's White Squirrel, which is a new company that came out, and their warehouse is beautiful. Like, shout out to White Squirrel. I want to live in your warehouse because it's amazing. They will never see this. They don't reply to my love letters.
Oh, no.
But, it's just this, as more people develop this Kickstarter stuff and people start creating these companies that do warehousing, I think those companies, as they bud and grow, are going to like have sister warehouses and just expand that way. It's going to be really interesting. I know Cards Against Humanity, their warehouse basically has that. They have a sister warehouse that's in Europe.
It's so smart.
Yeah, it is really smart.
But they do have like an onboarding cost, so that's not necessarily the best for creators with smaller Kickstarters. Like if you've got a big Kickstarter, it's interesting. If you got a small one, it's a bit expensive. Like their clientele is definitely like the big guys, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Whereas White Squirrel, their clientele is like the smaller artists. So you have people developing this service at different levels.
That's interesting.
We've got a question in the chat. So some of the more surprising hiccups your Kickstarters have hit over the years. That's actually an interesting segue we could do into what Giselle was mentioning earlier with kitting. By doing kitting, which is, as Giselle explained, to basically set up packages with all the rewards and the book that's been pre-packaged by tier, that has made it easier for us, but that has also made us realize early on that the best thing to do for rewards is to make sure that they are the same size as the book or less.
Yeah, that's so true.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big one.
Because often people who have Kickstarters, I feel, who hit a wall is because they offer really big rewards, which means that it doubles the shipping. Like, or they have rewards, like they have several rewards that are like high cost. Like usually the best you can do for doing a Kickstarter is that you have the book, which is the highest cost item. Or like if you're doing a pin Kickstarter, like your highest cost item is the group of pins. So usually you'd have the one very high-end item. You'd have maybe one other item that's really high-end and expensive, which is like you'd have the book and then you'd have a pin that goes with the book. But then your other rewards should be like really cheap to make, like stickers or postcard prints or something like that.
Right.
Because if you have big rewards or you have a lot of expensive rewards, you're going to hit a wall really fast.
That is true.
I think one of the worst things... Oh, you go. No, you go.
I was thinking in terms of also hiccups that we run into when we have really big rewards is like also when some prints are far too big to properly put in a book and we end up with damaged like stuff being sent to backers as well who are like, hey, this thing came in like busted. It's also very important to keep in mind as well because that's another hiccup that can happen, especially when people keep asking for refunds or returns and reshipments of damaged products.
And the problem with super expensive products too is that often you can only get a limited quantity. So if people ask for a lot of resends, at some point you're gonna be like, I have none left.
Yeah, that's so true.
Because you ordered like 10 extra and you blew for those really fast. I think
products with a lot of variables too are kind of difficult, like with t-shirts, having to take sizes, or even doing like multiple types of t-shirts, having to take the type, the color, the size.
Oh yeah, t-shirts are hell. Never do t-shirts.
Yeah, don't put a t-shirt in your Kickstarter at all.
Like,
they're tough.
Maybe if you want to do a Kickstarter specifically for a t-shirt, sure, do that. but like
Yeah.
as a reward, hell no.
You can do it taking like copious notes, but like it's not, I don't think, usually worth it.
Yeah.
It really isn't. I think one of the worst rewards we actually had, and that was before you started working here, Giselle. It was the body pillow thing, Dakimura, or however they call those.
Yeah, Daki Makura, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. We had this body pillow reward. That was a hassle.
I can imagine.
It wasn't sent as a full pillow though. It was sent as like a covering for a pillow. Please
Yeah.
tell me.
Sure.
Yeah, it was sent as a covering, but getting those made was expensive. You could only
Imagine.
get like a really small amount. We ran out of them
What's the amount?
super fast. You could only get like 15 at a time.
Wow. Crazy small.
So like, because it was like a really small supplier, so every time you'd order them, it'd be like 30.
Wow. That's crazy.
So you have to do like 5 orders to meet your demand. It's just like, this is ridiculous.
Oh,
That's
too
tough.
much.
That's tough.
So yeah, that's another thing too. Like, research your suppliers beforehand.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you want to list some rewards, just don't go like, yeah, the unit price was extremely high. It was, to answer the chat. But yeah, you should know your suppliers. Like, don't just pick rewards because you think it'd be fun. Like, all my friends are doing pins, so I'll make some too. Like, if you want to do a pin, make a design, have an estimate done before the Kickstarter, and then put it in. Because, like, if you don't have your suppliers listed, that's like a lot of time you're losing after your Kickstarter was done. Most people, after you do a Kickstarter, they expect you to ship stuff out within 4 months.
Sure.
Yeah.
Approximately.
I think another thing that's really helpful is to make sure that you have a couple suppliers that you could go to, because sometimes one supplier might have an issue, like especially like right now with shipping from China, like a lot of issues start to arise if you're trying to go to a supplier from China. Like, have something else in mind that won't break your bank when you get to it.
Yeah. And like, shit happens. It's basically the best attitude to have.
Hmm.
And it's good to have like suppliers that you've already tested for a couple things. Like, I have suppliers that a lot of people go like, oh, why do you use these guys all the time? This person would give you a better price. And I'm like, yeah, but this guy is reliable.
Yeah.
It's so real.
It makes a big difference, for sure.
Like, this guy's got my back. I love him. It's just really important. I feel it's also really important to like have your main reward done. Like, a lot of people, they don't prepare the book file before the Kickstarter starts because they're like, what if I don't make my goal? Then I'm not going to make my book. But it's like, yeah, but you should start at least, you know?
Right.
Yeah. Have pages prepped at least.
Because it's very long. Like, making a book is longer than it seems. I know a lot of people seem to think that you could just grab like the web version of your page and slap it onto a book and you're done, but that's really not how it goes.
Oh, no.
Which I think we could always do like a little aside to sort of talk about what are the basic things you should do for your pages to have a book that's printable, I think.
Oh, sure.
Oh, yeah.
So, I don't know, Giselle, if you want to start us off on this journey.
Oh, yes. First things that you'll need is to make sure your pages are above 300 DPI. That's like numero uno. Actually, Isabel knows a lot more about this because she does a lot more of the print stuff. I'm actually learning, but I mean, hey, if any chance I can get to like, practice my my knowledge. 300 DPI used to be the standard, but it is now the minimum.
Yeah.
So like it'll print, your pages will print at like the size that they're already like at. So if you say you have a 300 DPI page you've drawn in digitally, that's like a 6x9, which is excellent. You can't go above 6x9 with that page.
You're like trapped there.
Yeah. But if you were able to, but now like we now recommend like 400 DPI as a minimum. 600 is like ideal for color pages. It's a lot higher for black and white pages as well.
No, the 600 is actually the black and white.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
So like it's 400 for the colors. Okay, I'm getting
400
tested.
to 500 for colors. I mean,
Okay.
any you can have at 600 is fantastic.
Yeah.
For real.
Because you have all the flexibility in the world. But if you have 300 DPI, stuff is still printable. Like Giselle was saying, you're just trapped at the size that you drew them. You don't have any more flexibility. It's one for one. But anything that you have that's higher, you can shift and change and do a lot of stuff of. But I think more important than like if you have a page at 300 DPI, it's fine.
Yeah, it won't be the end of the world. Like,
yeah. The most important
300
thing...
DPI still looks good.
Sorry?
300 DPI still looks really good.
Yes, the minimum. As long as you're not blowing it up. Like, if you stay on your 1:1, like, you're perfect. But the main thing to remember is not just to have the DPI that's really elevated, but it's to keep your layers. Like...
Oh, so true. Oh my god.
If you have a 300 DPI file, but all your layers are present, you have a file that is way more workable than a 600 DPI file where you flatten everything.
Mm-hmm.
So real.
That's just how it is. And it's important to check this out because a lot of people right now have been using Clip Studio and Procreate, which are totally fine programs to draw in. Like, I'm not here to shame anybody who uses these. They are free and they are great. I actually think that does anybody in the chat actually use Clip or...
Yeah, we use Clip. Yeah,
I do.
Susan and I use Clip,
Yeah. I'm the only Photoshop bitch here. It's fine.
I mean, my Photoshop owns my ass because I have to use it for work. But like for my comic itself, like I'm doing everything in Clip Studio because it's so easy.
It's so nice.
It's so easy. It's so nice.
It's like it's really good for making digital stuff, but Procreate and Clip are not print friendly.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah.
They will rasterize fonts. Depending on the version of Clip you have, the CMYK is not real.
Yeah, that's real.
That's exactly true. It's not real. It's a joke. It's a lie.
No, but it's not real. Like it's not it's not actual. Like it's not ink colors. It's just less of a gamut.
Yeah, it's true.
So like you can have an approximation of what your thing is gonna look like when you print it, but they're not real print colors. Like it's a suggestion.
It is a suggestion. It's so true.
So like again, there's no shame in using Procreate or Clip, and you can transfer Procreate and Clip files to being actual book files because we've done that a lot. We've done that constantly here at Hiveworks because we do the pre-press work for our offers, and me and Giselle have seen many of these.
Mm-hmm. That was us this year too.
So many. So like it's possible, but if you're using these, you have to be aware of the flaws that come with it.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
Sort of understand that these flaws are going to make it so that processing your book is going to be a bit harder.
Yeah.
Maybe a lot harder if you rasterize all your fonts.
For sure.
Consider like there is an alternative program to InDesign that is way cheaper. That's called Affinity. Consider downloading and learning Affinity, maybe not to color or do anything, but just to letter, because Affinity will keep your layers open and they have about the same like lettering quality as Photoshop does. Because that Clip and Procreate are just not good for lettering. Like, I'm sorry, I don't want to shit on Clip and Procreate.
It's true. Like as somebody who works in Clip for my own comic, but also has had to like redo like some pages that were like done in Clip for their lettering. It's like just. In fact, I'm also planning for my own comic to like move on to like trying to do my lettering in a different program so that at least I'm prepared. Almost 1,000 pages later in my update, but still, better late than never.
No.
So true.
Book 1 is going to be hell, and book 2 you're going to be like, God damn it.
No, it's going to be a nightmare up until like book 5 of Star Trip. I'm so sorry to myself, to future me.
To me.
I'm sorry, future me. It has to be like this.
Future me's waiting at the end of like the tunnel with a knife.
Future me, why? It's too brute. Just stabbed. But yes, lettering. The main thing to remember about lettering when you're doing print stuff and when you're is that lettering is a bit of a beast to wrestle. And there is a couple of trends in webcomics that are really popular, but every time you have to like make that to print, it's just hell. And I think because we worked on a book lately that had that, so I think Giselle knows what I'm creeping on, but colored bubbles.
Oh.
So the best way to have your lettering print well is to basically set the colors of your font to 100% black. Anything that isn't quite that might halo. It might not halo, but it's extremely likely that it will when it prints. So the best way you can do it is 100% black on white bubbles. That is the safest way to do it. But a lot of people, for like style online, use a lot of colored bubbles and a lot of colored text because that usually reads better if you're doing an online comic. It looks very beautiful. People crying in the chat.
I know. I feel that deeply.
Like, poor Meg.
It looks really, really attractive on a screen because the colors are built from light. If you're looking at something on a screen, you are not printing this. You're just looking at something from light. So filling your page with color and not really having white or black as a contrast looks really good online. But when you're printing stuff, white as a color becomes very interesting because essentially it is the color of the medium you're using. Like a screen doesn't have a baseline white color. The baseline color of your screen is like death blue. We see it sometimes when the computer goes bye-bye.
Oh, sure.
Whereas like, and even like old computers, like old computers back in the day, you wouldn't have just a white screen. Like program would be like on a black screen or a dark blue screen. Like there would be a baseline color because it just works better to have, like that's why a bunch of programs have like dark mode.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Just having everything have color and having everything be filled just works better. But in print, the presence of white and of pure black is really important and is really attractive. So I think it's important when you're choosing a palette for your comic to sort of decide, like, am I printing this? Is that a goal that I want to do? Is this just online? If so, how am I using this negative space? How will this negative space print? Am I going to use a lot of white? You know, these are like important colors. We just started processing this other comic that's in black and white called Tiger, which is really good. You should totally read it. not biased.
Hell yeah.
And one of the things that the author wants to process to sort of get this to print is adding white to the pages, because filling it with gray looked really cool online, but you know, when you're printing it, then it just makes the pages look really busy, like you don't really have breaks inside them.
Right.
And that's why I think like a lot of people don't think about white, or if you're posting it as a digital page, it sort of makes the work seem unfinished, but it's actually like a really important non-color to exploit. I myself am kind of not super great at negative space. Like I'm saying this right now and I seem very wise, but it doesn't mean I do it. Like I'm an idiot. I actually see like the other people. Yeah, if I fill this with lines, it will look nice.
I want it to be pretty. Just make it pretty.
Fill the void. Fill the void.
Fill the void.
That's me with color, so I understand.
But you actually have really good negative space, though.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Shit.
Like if you like in some of your pages, if you just selected like the blue part and flushed it white, it would look perfect, like in print.
Excellent, perfect. Oh, thank God.
Whereas me, if I look at my pages and I'm like, ooh, I filled this all with line. Guess I'm fucked. Oh, there's actually a question in the chat. So for people who maybe haven't even started their comic, or maybe thinking about a new one, how might they optimize for printing in Kickstarter? Okay, that is a great question. So, step 1, pick a page size.
Oh, yes.
Please. Oh,
Oh
God.
God, yeah. Yep.
Please.
Yep.
Please. I think everybody here in the chat has all gone through the experience of being like, why did I make it this size?
Yeah, yes, 100%. Why is it the size it is? Why did I do that to myself? All
Yeah.
those
Oh
years
my
ago.
gosh.
Definitely
Can I talk
pick...
about-
So, you go.
Yeah, can I talk about mine? Okay, so like, for example, for me, young Giselle, starting off the comic like over 7 years ago, started off at a 6x9, which is amazing. Like, what were they thinking? They're genius. Moved on into 8x11, which is like the standard paper size for whatever bizarre reason I do not want to get into. Which means that now if I try to print a book, it'd be like different sizes. So therefore, I've had to find like a middling point with a 5x7, like the Tankoban size, and that took me like doing a bunch of research. Yeah, Megan. But
It's okay, Megan. We're gonna be the ones that are doing your book. Why are you crying? You're just making me really anxious right now.
She's crying for you.
Yeah, I'm willing to weep. It's okay. I'm already weeping at my own. But like, yeah, pick a size and stick to it. Like, if you're like one of those like genius like you know or foolish savants who just like, yeah, I'll just go with like the default 6x9. Stick with that, please. Oh my God, because 6x9, when you choose like a standard as well, it makes it so much cheaper to also print the book than if you're going with a custom size. Anyways, that's my spiel. Please, all of you also share your trauma.
Well, I was just gonna say that there's basically there's a couple of standard size you can use for comics. Essentially, the two most popular ones that I would recommend people go with are the 6x9, which is the graphic novel size. So, like if you read stuff like My Lesbian Experience with Loneliness or like Faith Heron Hicks books, like those books are in that size. So it's like a really versatile size. It's really popular for bookstores, and you can actually make a really nice, like where you draw on the computer, you can just make it 6x9. If you draw on paper like I do, there's actually a couple of sizes that you can blow it up to, so you can make some really nice big pages. Like, it's a very versatile, very good size. Highly recommended. I don't necessarily recommend.
I wish we did.
Yeah. Essentially, if you're working digitally, you would be working at 6x9. If like you can work your page at 6x9, you just up the DPI and you can have it 1-for-1. Like, if you've already picked your size, you don't necessarily need flexibility. So you can work on that. It's usually better if you're working on traditional paper to actually find a blown up equivalency that you're comfortable with. I work at, let me just open that up. I've got a specific size that I work in. This is like really precious information. I found like the ideal 6x9 size for paper, and I'm like hoarding this information like it's my life. Where did I put it though? Super special information, saved it nowhere.
In a safe place where you'll definitely be able to find it.
Oh yeah, I got it. It's basically
11x17, right?
If you work on 6x9, your paper, like if you're working on paper, or even digitally, you can blow it up that much. It is 8x12 or 9x14.5 or 12x18. So one of those sort of works as a corresponding one. Is 6x9 the same as A1? Oh god, I forget all the time. 11x17, that is actually linked to, someone in chat just said that, that's actually linked to the other standard size. The other standard size is known as the American standard size. It prints at 7x10 inches, and essentially 11x17 pages were made back in the day for that. The artists would draw traditionally on paper on 11x17, and then it would get shrunk down to the 7x10 to be printed. So if you're working on 11x17, you essentially would print in American standard size. So that's great. You're doing great. Hero Kib, whatever you're doing, fantastic. You got this in the bag. So it's the same if you're working.
Old masters.
If you're working like digitally or traditionally 11x17, both for good, and it basically shrinks down to 7 by 10. So these are the two American standard size, the graphic novel and the American standard for comics. There is 8.5 by 11, which is called the magazine size. That is also a standard size, but it's rarely seen in American comics. It's mostly used for like European comics that get translated to American, or just European comics as a whole. Though European comics also have larger sizes than that because they are insane.
Wow.
I love their art.
Yeah, that's luxury comics right there.
Yeah, the rich. So you can still do that one, and it's still a standard size if you print it. But in the American market, the 8 by 11 is definitely like less sort of enjoyed. And when I started my comic 10 years ago, I worked in 8.5 by 11 because I was used to consuming European comics because I'm like French in origin. So most of the comics I read as a child were in that kind of sizing. So when I started, I was smart enough to pick a size. So Namesake is standard from day one. But the issue with what I was doing is that I didn't necessarily pick the best size to work at in English.
Right. Yeah, we had the same issue where we picked it's a consistent size throughout. It's just not one we want.
Yeah.
I'm still printing Namesake in 8.5 by 11 though, but I think Namesake, God knows when it shall be done. But I think after I'm done with that, I think I'm just going to move on to American Standard and 6 by 9 for any works that I'm producing in English, just because the market sort of dictates this. I don't regret working outside for Namesake, and I'm happy that from day one I had a specific size and I was already working 300 DPI forward, and now I'm working 400 DPI.
Right, yeah.
So like, I did pretty good for myself there, but I definitely did not really study the English market, which was kind of the thorn that I have to deal with. Books I had done consecutively, like Valor, follow American Standards, so at least I saved my ass for that one. But and that's
shout out to people who have. Sorry.
You go.
Well, I was just going to say shout out to the people who have been able to keep a consistent size.
Yeah.
You are the greats.
I was just going to add that the whole like size being a little bit random is a common problem we actually have with European artists. Because like me, they tend to pick sizes that kind of work with what they have. But if you look at what's being printed in the USA, it doesn't match at all. So language you're working on, where you intend to print it, can influence the size choice. The Tripping Over You group, did you two have like a story for size? I know you do because we've discussed it.
No.
Well, I think at the time we like looked at books we had and we were like, we took out the ruler and we were like, what is this? And I don't think we even really knew how to translate like working size to what the print size came out to be. And I think by the end of it we were like, this seems good, I guess. Now it's a custom size now, isn't it, by the end of it?
Yeah, it is a custom size now. Unfortunately, at the beginning, I made the mistake of I didn't even think about print.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't even ever think that we would print anything. Yeah. I just thought it was going to forever be a webcomic, and maybe we'd do it for a couple of years, whatever.
Yeah.
So my first pages I'm looking at are 72 DPI.
Oh, no, they're awful. No, it's bad.
And they are 800 by 1,000. And that's the first 4 chapters.
Oh, my God.
Wow. That hurts.
Yeah.
Oh,
it hurts.
Dear.
Yeah, it's very painful. So I think we've. So what did we do for the first book?
So I think we printed it at the 100%, and we printed it to a standard paper size,
right?
Because when we first printed, we actually didn't know what printer to go through.
Right.
We had no contact with anyone that could tell us where to get books printed.
Anyone. Yeah.
We actually went all over town. We were living in Massachusetts at the time, and we were trying to find a book printer, and we couldn't find any online. So we found someone locally that was saying that their company wanted to start printing comics and graphic novels. So we met with them in this meeting, and basically they made textbooks for colleges.
Yeah.
And they didn't even know what they were getting into.
Yeah, no, it was tough. It was tough times. It really was. Oh, no, it's tough. Yeah, we'll definitely now, looking back, have to redraw those first 4 chapters for sure.
Whenever we finish our entire comic, we're going to probably have to actually go through and redo the first 4 chapters just to make it match, just to make the omnibus.
Yeah.
But at least at that point, we can add in things that we couldn't have added before.
Sure.
So,
yeah. We have like the luxury now of having done it for as long as we have, that we know things that we want to add or things that, you know, we'd shift around. But yeah, it sucks.
Yeah. The good thing is each of those chapters is about 25 pages, so it's really not as much as it could have been.
Yeah.
I think that's probably about a year of work if we work as like casually as we currently work on the comic.
And there's no rush. Like we don't really. We're not ready to like go back and start the comic over or anything. Like we'll do it later when it's necessary or even a thing. But yeah, it's tough. Hindsight, I guess.
I like the mention of the omnibus. I'm kind of like, work for us.
yeah, we're excited. It's ways off, but you know,
I think we
dream about.
Yeah, I think we have a couple more years.
Yeah.
We're looking at, I think 2, maybe 3 more chapters.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And then that's it.
Yeah.
That's
so close.
I know. It's coming. The end is coming.
There's
a lot of like older decade-long comics that are ending currently, and every time one passes the finish line, I just feel like I'm high-fiving an oldie. Like, yeah,
You made it.
You made it, bro.
Congratulations, sincerely. Good for you.
Yeah,
so cool.
It is.
It's pretty amazing. All right, so to sort of go over what we were talking about, so when you're starting a comic, the basic stuff you should know: pick a format. Make sure you have a pretty high DPI. 300 is the minimum if you're printing 1-for-1. Ideally, 400 and more would be amazing. Beware of Procreate and Clip Studio. If you can, try to learn a program like Affinity, which is pretty cheap for lettering. That will help. Whenever you're starting a comic, it's important to take a decision regarding color as well. I know a lot of webcomics online push color and this idea of like, oh, you have to use color because otherwise people aren't going to read it. But that's just not true.
Please make black and white comics more. I wish I did.
Yeah, first of all, black and white is amazing. And it's not less trendy because manga exists. Anybody who tells you that doing your webcomic in black and white will make it fail is a goddamn liar.
It's so true.
And it's so cheap to print.
It's so cheap to print.
It's very cheap to print. It's cheaper to do as well. Color is wonderful. Don't get me wrong. But it has a couple limitations, and you shouldn't just, like, if you're doing it black and white or color, you should definitely pick black and white or color with a reason, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Don't just go like, I'm going to do this in color because comics are in color. Like, you should have an artistry to it or a desire to learn something. Like, I suck at coloring. In this chat we actually have, because you've got Owen and Susanna who started a comic with spot color and then moved to full color. You've got Giselle, who is basically a coloring expert, and you have me,
rainbow,
who is basically a color squib.
No, absolutely not.
Has no desire to color. I am learning, but like I hate it. I really hate it.
I hated it a lot at first too. I really, truly despised it. It's probably only like in the last year that I've actually started enjoying it sincerely.
And I'm really glad you do, because the only thing I like to ink.
Yeah. I've really started to like it, and I'm glad that I like it because it was torture.
Yeah.
But yeah, to answer the questions that popped up in the chat, so is Hiveworks looking for black and white comics? We don't have a preference. You can submit to us color, black and white. Like, if there's an artistry to it or it matches your story, we'll be interested. We're not going to discount people because they send us black and white, but we don't necessarily have a preference either. We basically like both. Just send us something cool. Is it comical to do black and white, and like Namesake sometimes does the full color? Okay, so to be honest, Namesake is actually a full color comic, because this brings me to my next point. There's actually like a middle child between black and white and color, and that is called spot color, and spot color can be a bastard because there's actually 2 ways of doing it. You can do spot color like Namesake, where everything's in black and white except details, but the color basically changes constantly. Like, the spot color is always different. There's no consistency. The thing with doing it that way is that it's purely stylistic. You do not save on printing or anything like that, because when you print it, it will be printed in full color. The advantage of the spot color from economical standpoint is that it is a bit less work, but Namesake is also cell shaded, which is really long. So, to get the final pages, it takes about as much time as coloring the whole damn thing. It's 100% like a stylistic choice.
Right.
However, if you do spot color and you use a consistent palette, let's say you use the same 2 colors and then black and white, that is actually cheaper to print, because if you go with a professional printer that does illustrated books or comics and you use only a duotone ink, they will charge you the same thing as black and white.
That's nice.
Yeah, it's good to know.
Yeah.
It's
very emotive stories, like,
Yeah. Well, there was Bloom. It's a comic that's been done lately.
Yeah.
Who is the author? Does anybody remember? The name escapes
I
me.
don't remember the name offhand.
Something.
Well, that was First Second, right?
Yeah, it's for second.
Yes.
Can someone Google that real quick?
Okay, I heard tapping. Somebody else.
Someone's doing it.
I stopped.
Kevin Panetta.
Okay, that's it. So Bloom, At For Second by Kevin Panetta, that is a book that is basically a very specific palette. So it was most likely not super expensive to print. And it just looks beautiful. Like, if you're a fan of the kind of finish that black and white does, but you want some color, limited palette spot color might be for you,
That's cool. That's really cool. Gorgeous.
Yeah, that book is gorgeous. Highly recommended.
Yeah, I love it. I personally want to sort of move to limited palettes and black and white stories because, as I said before, I'm a squid and I'm lazy. Now I got other things to do.
I'll admit, as somebody who has done lots of color as well, like, I'm also just like, I'm over it. Time to move on.
Yeah. Well, once you've mastered it, the frill is gone.
Yes, next is inking.
So yeah, choosing how you want to ink, what color format and all that, like, it's stuff that's important to do beforehand, not just to facilitate printing later on, because, sometimes you're not going to ever get to print. Maybe you're going to maybe you're just going to like doing it online, but I think that thinking in these terms also helps you sort of define the identity of the work and how this sort of matches with, like, what you're saying. Like, to sort of go back to Giselle's comic, Star Trip, I actually really like that Star Trip is in color. Like, even though you're like, I wish it was in black and white because it would be cheaper to print. But, like, the color brings something beautiful to the story because it's basically like a space road trip. And it's emotional, and the color just really brings that home, I think.
It is gorgeous.
Oh, thank you. Aw.
Like, I don't know if that's how you feel about your color, but that's how I feel about your color, so...
I mean, there's probably something going on in my brain meats that are like, yes, I know exactly what I'm doing, but my hands are just like, we're so tired. No more color.
Please, sir, why?
Yeah.
Please, let me stop. Let me rest.
For tripping over you, honestly, I can't decide if I like the spot color or if I like the color better. I think I like the color better.
I feel very nostalgic about the spot color sometimes because it is such a, like, oh, that was when we were babies. We didn't know what we were doing. It's so, oh, look at that, time gone by. It's very, like, time capsule-y.
Yeah.
But after having played with it as long as I do, I really like coloring. I like doing the full color now, even though I like going back to the spot color for, like, nostalgia trips. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think for a lot of it, the change in that also comes when the boys, like, transition out of, like, a certain part of their life. So I think
high school,
kind of changes the mood, too.
Yeah. It's kind of cool to look back on, I guess.
You guys also use way more, like, white in the color pages, so there's, like, more contrast. It's, like, nice. It's nice on the eyes.
Thanks you.
It's soft. It's very gentle. It's very soft.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I basically went through like your whole library when we were preparing book 5 to sort of get a handle on how they were printed before.
Mm-hmm.
That was a fun little trip in memory lane.
Thank you. Thank you.
So yeah, this is just details you should do. I guess it's sort of a bit esoterical to sort of go like, hey, you should think about format before you even draw the thing. But
Yeah.
I feel like comics is like the only kind of medium where this seems like a really obvious suggestion, but nobody really talks about it. Like if you're trying to write a book, people are going to be like, think about what editor you want to pitch it to, because that's important for the identity. Or like if you're doing a movie, people are going to be like, what camera are you using? Like the material aspect is sort of baked into everything, but in comics for some reason we don't really talk about it. And
I think it's because like each page when it's done feels like its own thing. Do you know what I mean? So to collect 100 of them or less or more, like you kind of look back on these 100 events that I drew this to completion, saved it out, like put it in a folder, put it on the website, whatever. And you don't really, when you're not paying attention, you don't think about like when it's done, make sure that the formatting is ready to go to like print and everything's all set, and you checked your black is at 100%, and you checked that your font isn't rasterized, and you checked that this and that. So it's like, oh, I just want to get it done for Friday, just you know what I mean, like whatever. I want to get it done for Monday, and you don't think about like, and also you want to make sure it's done also for 2 years from now when it's ready to go to printer or whatever.
But even just thinking about it before starting, I feel like a lot of people focus on like the characters and the world building, but the authors that are like their examples, their mentors, don't necessarily talk about like you should really, really think about format. Except me. I tell that to everybody all the time. Like I'm the grandma that's like, have you decided if it was black and white?
I think that kind of happens once you've like moved on to your second comic. Your first one's always going to be a messy monster. Yeah. The
first emotional foray into trying.
Firstborn, the practice child.
Your firstborn that you kind of messed up on. Sorry.
Yep.
I mean, if you have artistic talents, you've already sold your firstborn to Satan, and that's why it's awful.
That's why it's bad.
Sorry, Star Trek.
Sorry. That explains it. Okay.
The sacrifice.
It's the sacrifice.
So essentially, that's kind of just like things to watch out for. To sort of just do a little closer, obviously there's no perfect way to do anything, especially art. Like art is always going to be a bit of a beast that you have to take on a rodeo. Essentially the easiest thing to do for both a Kickstarter and preparing a book for print is to sort of make sure like that you're aware of what you're getting into, and to sort of find ways to be like safe and healthy, essentially. Make yourself a work schedule, try to think about format, stuff like that. And if it doesn't work out, like you can always backtrack. And like we've formatted books at Hiveworks that were essentially lost causes without like our wonderful book technicians. Like shout out to Megan and Rhiannon, who like are amazing and have saved us from the pit of hell several times. But like
heroes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Heroes without capes.
Yep.
You can always backtrack and you can always make something work. Like if you don't necessarily format something, or you get to the end of something you've made that was just made to be digital, and at the end some publisher comes up to you and wants to print it, you can't see it as a failure, because the thing with a good story is that people are going to make it work, So definitely think about stuff so you can try to be safe and happy, but like you can never mess up art. Art can always be saved.
That's true.
And I think that's what matters the most. Like what matters is that the work you're creating makes you happy. But it's important to think about the work you're creating in terms of the format, but also in terms of why you're making it. Are you trying to make a product to sell? Or are you trying to make a product for yourself? These are all like very philosophical questions, but if you sort of ask yourselves these early on, you will save yourself some strife down the road. And, they're very hard questions to do if you don't have a lot of experience too. So never be shy to maybe ask other comic creators, especially those in positions of mentorship. We're usually always down to rant about stuff.
Oh, I love talking shop. It's so much fun.
Agreed.
Yes.
And definitely like share videos like this one with your friends. This is probably a good time to say that all the videos that we are going to make in the streams this weekend will be posted on YouTube with references to any book or elements that we've mentioned. So definitely keep an eye out to the YouTube channel and follow us on Twitter so you can have access to this information and share it with your fellow artists. Another reminder, if you're watching us on Twitch, if you scroll down, we've got a couple links to sales and Kickstarters that are going on right now. So check out our Kickstarter for Alice in Nightmare Book 1, as well as for Among Us Book 1. And check out our store. We currently have a code where you can save 10% on all our books and like items and apparel. So spring 2020, check that out. Check out our comics and follow us on Twitter for more information about the other streams that we're going to have this weekend. We have a total of 8 streams. This is free down, so we've got 5 left. Starting tomorrow at 1 o'clock, we have Slow Burn Romance and Fantasy Stories, so definitely show up for that one. It's going to be fun.
I'm excited.
Real steamy stuff.
Hell yeah.
And definitely check out Iron Circus Comics on Twitter. They are also having a bunch of streams going on right now. Pajama Con 2020. So tune into that. They're smaller panels than what we're doing. They're mostly just to talk to creators directly and also to have recommendations for different items you can purchase that were originally going to be sold at Emerald City. So definitely check that out. Discover some new artists. Find some cool pins to wear, books, the whole 9 yards.
Very cool. Love that.
And as a reminder to anybody who tuned in pretty late, the people in this stream are me, Isabelle Melançon, author of Namesake, Giselle Weaver, who is the author of Star Trip, and also my co-worker at Hiveworks with a focus on Kickstarters, immense talent to get those done, and Owen and Susanna, who are the authors of Tripping Over You. Beautiful little story about coming of age couple. Love it. Wonderful. And a great example that format does not necessarily hinder your growth.
Thank you.
So thanks for joining us. This is the end of our stream, and I really appreciate everybody coming to talk here and everybody coming to join the chat.
Thanks so much for hosting us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm going to leave the chat open even though I'm stopping the stream. So if you guys want to just like pop in and put your like Patreons and Twitters, that would be really great.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye. Thanks for coming.